Washington's on their way to Camp Randall. It's time for some keys to the game.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes with me over at Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And just a quick reminder to all you everydayers out there, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you don't miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the show out a lot. Now, Lars, we got our favorite show of the week coming out all the everydayers out there today. It's time for some bold predictions. Your score prediction, we get to that at the end of the show, though, because we got some defensive keys to a Washington win at Wisconsin, but for the now number 23 ranked Huskies in the college football playoff. That is, shout out to the CFP committee for getting that one right. We always start on the offensive side of the ball. So as you look at this game, what's your number one key to the game?
So whether, no pun intended there, honestly, factors into the game, reestablish the run. I think that's something that's been lacking from Washington the past, call it just a month. And it really goes back to even late September, if you want to be honest. But if Washington can reestablish the run game, everything will work out because you can control the game, you control the line of scrimmage, that everything goes in tandem with that. But I think it also, within that, should be a balancing act between Jonah Coleman and Adam Muhammad. I think they both offer something slightly different where Jonah's going to be the one probably getting the touchdowns, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Adam get a few more carries in between the 20s.
So I like where you're going with that because let's get one thing straight with Wisconsin, whose defense has certainly struggled over the course of the season. That's the strongest part of their defense right now, which is number 7 in the Big Ten, allowing 110.7 yards per game. But that was my number one thing. But the one name you didn't mention was actually my number one key to all of this, and it's Dezmen Williams, where establishing him on the ground is something I'm really interested in the tremendous crossover is able to do with our good buddy Ryan Herrings from Locked On Badgers on our Thursday show. One of the things that we talked about was a one-time UW target who I know I was very high on. I know you were as well, in 4-star linebacker Mason Bosa, who's probably going to be a big part of this game in terms of spying Dezmen Williams. I'm curious to see what kind of role he might play because I really like him. I think he's a talented player. I don't know if he's got the speed to contend with Dezmen Williams on the edge. And this is one of those games where I think that this Wisconsin defense, especially, with what the weather might look like, I think that they're going to try to add somebody extra to the box and key in on stopping Jonah Coleman, which has just been such a big part of opposing game plans, like really all season long, but especially since Big Ten play started. So I think this is one of those games where, yeah, for sure, you're going to try to establish Jonah between the tackles, but it's going to be on a lot of different read option style plays, especially with Carver Willis and John Mills now back in the fold. So if you're able to get Dezmen going outside of the tackle box in a way that you weren't able to in your last road game at Michigan, I think that's going to be really, really critical because if you can do that early and you start to get some of these guys to have to freeze for an extra second, whether it be, on an RPO action, again, read options, different things like that, you're going to open up so much of this Jedd Fisch offense and you're able to probably get them on the move a little more in bootlegs and different things like that, which is going to open up the passing game as well.
I like that a lot. And I think the one thing to consider within that I had for when it comes to Dezmen Williams is keep Dezmen upright again and, allow him to run, as you said, but also just in general, allow him to execute the game plan and to execute the offense that we know he can do at a high level. And the reason why I want to emphasize that is Quentin Moore being back as a blocking tight end. I think that is going to be an X factor in this game that if you're talking about, Dezmen running outside, keeping the zone read option, Quentin's going to play a huge role in that. Now, again, I don't see your point about can anybody keep up with Dezmen. I don't think anybody can. Nobody has Demon's speed. So I think, you could put, I don't even know, John Ross on defense, and I still don't think he's going to catch up to Dezmen, just for a couple of different reasons there. But you look at it, and I think Decker, DeGraff, and Quentin Moore being those two blocking tight ends, Decker obviously a little more better polished as a pass catcher, but both of those guys on the edge helping out the offensive line, I think that it's going to work in tandem. And that also factors into Jonah being a pass blocker as well, who's, I've beaten that drum for about 2 years now. It's just his ability to pass block and just give him Dezmen that extra second, whether it's on a deep ball or to decide, okay, wait, now I got to split out and run. Instead of getting sacked like we saw at Michigan, it's the Illinois game. It's the Rutgers game. It's the, other games where Dezmen's been able to have that extra second or two to make those decisions and then go off for, 20, 30, 40-yard run.
So I like where you're going with that, but we need to talk a little bit more about the pass game, because this is one of those games where I'm curious to see what it's going to look like, where Wisconsin has struggled defending the pass, where they've allowed 230.3 yards per game so far through the air this season. And I'm curious, because the reason we wanted to start with the run game is obviously, that's what you want to do with this tandem of stars in the backfield, right? But on top of that, with what the weather could look like, I'm curious to see what Jedd's plan of attack might be, because you look at the game plans over the last couple of weeks, no matter what the weather is, we know this team is going to want to throw the ball, but do it efficiently and effectively. And I think that's something where, especially you look at the last game against Illinois, you were able to do that really well against a defense that, just like Wisconsin, has struggled at defending the pass. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the short to intermediate game for not just Denzel Boston to thrive, but guys like Raiden Vinesbright, Dezmen Roebuck, Decker DeGraff, who you mentioned a minute ago as well. And if you're able to get Damon Williams in rhythm, I don't think you necessarily need to do that super early in the game. It's always important to do so, right? But it's one of those things where if you can try to keep Wisconsin on their heels in terms of you're running the ball on these read options, you're getting Demond outside of the tackle box, and he's able to pick up 5, 6, 7 yards on a couple plays on the opening drive. Again, all of a sudden, I think that's just going to open up so much more in the passing game, because I look at what this game might look like, especially with what Denzel did in his last outing. I feel like we're going to see the coverage tilted his way, as it has been for the majority of the season, but especially in a game like this where he was just such a big factor last time out. I think that there's just going to be some defensive coordinators, with Wisconsin included in this, that are going to say, we're comfortable with letting these other guys, these young freshmen, beat us one-on-one, because we can't let these established superstars continue to just do what they have been all season long. And will that work out? We'll see. But I think that, again, with somebody like Dezmen Roebuck, I got a bold prediction on him coming later on, so stick around for that. But I think that this is one of those games where we're going to see him and Raiden Vinesbright continue to show what kind of building blocks they can be for this offense, not just for the final month of this year, but for years to come as well.
That's a great point. And within that, you mentioned Jedd Fisch, and will he be able to execute that game plan? What will the game plan be? I think that honestly is the kind of quintessential difference maker in this game, where can Jedd get out of Jedd's own way, which we've seen at times him be he's been pretty good at that this season, but at times, especially on the road, that's kind of where you look at the Maryland game, you look at obviously the Michigan game for a different reason. Both of those games you could point to and say, ooh, some of the play calling was a little peculiar there, because you have the talent, like you mentioned with Jonah, Denzel, even Dezmen and Raiden Vinesbright. Like, you have all the talent in the world offensively to execute what you need to do to win the game. I mean, I think there was a graphic that was basically Indiana and Washington and then the rest of the country in terms of offensive efficiency. But you're 6-2, trying to be 7-2. You have 2 losses for a reason. Now, again, one was to Ohio State. That's its own reason. But you look at the Michigan game and think you probably could have won that game if you really had everything going in your favor. And for me, Jedd being able to outcoach Luke Fickell shouldn't be that much of a challenge. And I think
Luke Fickell, who's sticking around now, by the way, after he got the extra vote of confidence, hey, we're not firing this guy, which is its own thing, but this is a Washington show, so.
Exactly. And just within all of that, I mean, it's so bizarre that he's even coaching in this game. But beside the point, not bizarre that Jedd is coaching in the game. And I think when you look at what Jedd has been able to do this season, as long as he can keep Demond on schedule, establish the run like we're talking about, just allow the offense to naturally produce like it should, that is what I expect to see. This should be like a 35-7 game for Washington's favor. This should be, that's not my score prediction, just be clear here. But I just look at that and say, like, if Jedd can kind of just allow the offense to go as it should, there's no reason why Washington shouldn't come back from Camp Randall with, a comfortable win, I should say.
So I like where you're going with that. I think that especially what you're trying to emphasize there is starting fast, which before the Illinois game had been a bit of a problem. And this is one of those things where, I'm not completely sold on this aspect or that aspect of the game. It's doing so on the road is just such a different story. And I really do believe that something clicked with this team following the Illinois win, or just in that game itself too. But doing that, coming off a bye week, 4+ hours from home is just such a different story, especially with what the elements might look like in this game. So that's something I'm really curious about seeing, but I have faith in this offense with, the scripted plays that they were so solid last week or in the last game 2 weeks ago now, which time flies, against Illinois. So I like what Jedd has done on that side of the ball, but where we really need to see this team step up, especially against such a lackluster offense, is on the defensive side. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Washington, Denzel Boston delivered in a big way in that last game against Illinois. 10 catches, 153 yards, both career highs, scored a touchdown through the air, and he also threw a touchdown when the pressure was on. He came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Denzel is on a streak. And just like Denzel delivered for the Huskies, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. We've also got a message from our good friends over at Doer. I'm so excited about these new jeans that I have coming in the mail from Doer. I've heard just the best things about them. I can't wait to wear them. For someone like me who I played baseball in high school and college, I have a lot of trouble finding jeans that fit. And with these ones, Doer jeans, they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. I absolutely love that. And made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture, it keeps you cool and comfortable as the temperatures change. And Doer jeans, they feel stretchy without looking stretchy. I absolutely love that because as someone who lives in athletic wear, Doer combines classic jeans wear with the kind of comfort and performance that you get from athletic wear. It really is the best of both worlds. Designed to look great and stay comfortable all day, no matter what you're doing. Doer is because they are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. It is absolutely awesome. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. Get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go to shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. Shopdoer.com/LockedOnSeattle. So as I look at the defensive line, one thing that I think that's obviously where this conversation needs to start, because you look at this Wisconsin offense and there's any amount of numbers you could throw out there and say it's really underperformed in this category, that category. I think underperformed is being nice about it, where they're scoring 5.4 points per game in conference play. You need to find a way to not just dominate at the line of scrimmage, but get after the quarterback. And we just haven't seen this team do that. Whether it is, Danny O'Neal, whether it is Carter Smith, we see him make his first career appearance. There are so many different things that Wisconsin could throw at Washington offensively from the quarterback position in terms of both those guys have a little bit more mobility. There's just a little bit more of just that running, not only that running element involved, but I don't think that they're going to necessarily beat you down the field, which is why that this conversation needs to start up front, because we just haven't seen the pass rush be as effective as it probably should be with the rotation that you have on the interior of the defensive line. And at the same point, like, this Wisconsin offensive line has been solid, but not only is it dealing with injuries and shuffles, and it's starting to find its form a little bit, but I feel like that was the same conversation that was being had around this Illinois offensive line coming into that game. And while there was a little bit of pressure at different points of time, it didn't result in any sacks. And in a game like this, especially with quarterbacks who have been prone to making mistakes, which I want to talk about in a few minutes here, I think that just getting pressure up front and dominating along the defensive line, which has been a challenge for this team this year, is by far the most important thing on defense.
I like that a lot. And when you think about Washington's 2 primary edge rushers, Zach Durfee and Jacob Lane, can you not think of a more quintessential, just like North Midwest? Obviously Zach being from Minnesota, just kind of edge rushers, kind of defensive linemen, and the way this game shapes up, tough, cold, potentially rainy. I would love, because I talked about tackles for loss earlier this week, both of them combining for like 5 tackles for loss in this game. Like, I just really want to see the 2 edge rushers move the pocket and allow whatever happens up the middle to happen, because, we haven't really seen it from any one of the 4 or 5 linemen on a consistent basis this season. I mean, we know they have potential, we know they have talent, but from a game in, game out, week in, week out perspective, this is a way to establish the month of, not just establishing the game, but establish the month of November and say, if you want to win out, if you want to do what you can accomplish this month, it starts against Wisconsin. And I think if both of those guys can find a way to just move the pocket, no matter who's starting, and then you control the edge, set the edge as we talk about a lot in the run game and things like that, you will effectively just make Wisconsin completely obsolete, and then it just comes down to, can your offense put up 10 points? That's really all it comes down to.
You're talking about setting the tone. And I think that that's a really great way of putting it, because it's not just for this game, it's for what this entire month means, because there's so much that it's something I've heard a couple times this week, and I think is a really great point, that there's so much that can get lost in terms of momentum over a bye week, especially combining that with a cross-country road trip. Like, there are so many things that go into that I look at this game and I can't help but feel like, going back to the slow starts thing on offense, if you do see something like that, there are going to be those concerns early on. We're going to see, everything on Twitter like, oh, what's going on with this, with that? Why is there another slow start? This is really concerning. And I think some of that can be, fair in its own right. But this is one of those games where the defense, with what you are going to see from Wisconsin offensively, the defense can really just nullify that. And I don't even mean as simple as you need like a big time strip sack or a pick six turnover kind of deal. No, if you just do what you're supposed to against this Wisconsin offense, like, that's going to be enough, because like you're saying, the offense will be able to find its footing. They've shown that week in and week out. And it's not even that I think this Wisconsin defense is solid and a little bit better than the numbers might show because of some of the games that they've had. Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, even Iowa. Like, Iowa looked really solid against them. There's 37-0. I look at all those games and I think that Washington's defense does have the ability to come in and absolutely dominate this game, but I just have more questions about that right now, because we've seen them show some holes early on in games and then get stronger as the game moves along. And I think that this certainly could be one of those games, but one of the ways that I think you can absolutely nullify that is something we talked about the other day, and that's by creating turnovers. And this is something also that I'll get to a little bit later on in a bold prediction, but Wisconsin is tied for the most interceptions thrown in the Big Ten this season with 10. It's them and Purdue. Interesting, with how that works out for Washington for the next couple of weeks. But this is one of those games where I said you don't need a turnover to really establish momentum in this game, but it's absolutely not going to hurt in any way, shape, or form, right? I know. Super hard-hitting analysis there, too. And this is one of those things that I look at where we got a chance to talk to Ryland Dillard-Allen and Zajic Rainey-Saleh a little bit earlier this week. Those are two guys in particular that it's always interesting when Jedd Fisch and his coaching staff will put true freshmen in front of us in the media. It shows that they really believe in those guys and that there's just so much more ahead of them. And for especially a guy like Ryland, I think that this is one of those games where he can really come out and make a statement. It's not just because he is, despite being 5'10", 5'11", 175 pounds, a super physical force, but he's one of those guys where in a game like this, if Wisconsin is going to try to run the ball a lot, where they're averaging a Big Ten low 3.2 yards per carry, all of a sudden, like, having just that extra guy in the box who can just make a statement, maybe the ball's a little slick and you're able to force a fumble, do something like that. That's just the momentum that could really ignite you early on. Again, against an offense like this, is it necessary? No, but it's never going to be something where it's, oh yeah, you don't need that.
And Tyler, I like where you're going with that. I think kind of maybe what you're getting at is, in a way, controlling, just the flow of the game, but maybe not getting a turnover, but getting off the field. I think that, to me, is where when you look at Wisconsin's last 4 games, 3 third down conversions, 2 third down conversions, 5 and 4. Washington, defensively, they were pretty good for a while there, and then, at times they've struggled. So for me, the big key in all of that is if you can get turnovers, great. If Tacario Davis makes up for the 4 he should have had last week and the probably, 10 total he should have this season when you combine between games that he missed and opportunities missed, this is a game where if you can get that number to 3 or less, that you're sitting pretty, because you don't give Wisconsin that opportunity to believe they still are in the game. You don't give them the thought of, hey, we're still hanging with them, because, like you mentioned, if Wisconsin defensive is able to, kind of slow Washington down early on in the first half, and this turns into the Ohio State game where it's 7-7 in the first half, like that's reprehensible.
That's a problem.
Exactly. And so now against Ohio State, totally, that's a win. But against a team like Wisconsin, that's the other thing kind of within this third down key. They have 6 straight losses. Like that, yeah. You're talking about a team that is just beyond on the ropes. Like, if you could deliver that knockout punch, whether it's with a turnover or just shutting them out, maybe like 1 third down conversion in the entire game, that's something for me that I would love to see, because if you can do that, you're, again, taking away every chance that Wisconsin has. And the only way that Washington loses this game, as I've been saying, throughout the week, is if they beat themselves.
So, and that's been a consistent theme of Jedd Fisch team. So there is something to be said for that, but it's, again, because I like where you're going with that. It's all about continuing to just build that momentum where you have so many opportunities over the next 3 weeks to if you do what you're supposed to do to work out so many different kinks and so many different issues. And I think third down defense is one of the biggest, where they're 16th in the Big Ten right now, allowing 45.7% conversion rate on third down. Only Illinois and UCLA are worse. So I look at this and I love where you're going with that, because it's one of those things where I think it combines with the defensive line really, really well, because it's something that our buddy Ryan Herring's made a point of on yesterday's show, where if all of a sudden you can't run the ball effectively and you're in 2nd and 7s and 3rd and 8s, that's going to be such a big problem for this offense that hasn't been able to move the ball, hasn't been able to score. It just creates so many issues. And I don't trust this Wisconsin offense in 3rd and long scenarios. As much as this defense has shown to have holes in that point of its game, I don't think these receivers can create separation, especially against Tacario Davis and Ephesians Prysock, and throwing Rashawn Clark into that mold as well. Washington just has the talent necessary in the secondary to shut down Wisconsin's passing game. So it's just a matter of finding a way to be more physical than them and win the game at the line of scrimmage, because that is just such an important part of just playing in the Big Ten in general, but especially for beating Wisconsin, where Ryan Walters said it earlier in the week. He said, I believe this team is a lot better than their record might show. And this is one of those opportunities where, okay, yeah, that might be true. And that might be your opinion of this team as well. But if you can all of a sudden just crowd the box with 7, 8 guys, shut down the run game earlier on and force them to beat you through the air, that with this offense and the way it's played so far this year is a recipe for success. And with that being said, I've got some really fun defensive predictions. So we're going to start on that side of the ball and switch things up a little, but we'll do that on the other side of the break. Right after a message from our good friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has a next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. So I gave it away. We're starting on the defensive side of the ball today, and I forgot who's supposed to go first, even after we did some basketball bowl predictions last week. So because I kind of spoiled it a little bit, let me start on the defensive side of the ball here. And this is one of those games where I called him a name to know, as the Everydayers know, on our Thursday show. I have Alex McLaughlin leading Washington, having 10 plus tackles. And I want to add like a double. I know, shocker, right? I want to double down here a little bit and give myself an extra fake point, because we don't keep track of this stuff. If it happens, I feel like he has a real opportunity to set a career high in tackles, where right now his season high is 13 from the Ohio State game. And I look at this as just an opportunity for him to do that, because Wisconsin is going to run the ball early and often. They've had so much trouble throwing the ball. And this is one of those games where we're not expecting Jacob Monner to play. Again, I know, shocker. But Alex is going to probably line up at that box safety inside linebacker role a significant amount in this game to help take away the run game, to maybe help take away some tight ends in the passing game as well. And so he's somebody who has always been around the ball all season long. He's the team leader in tackles. And this is just one of those games where I feel like he can really, I don't want to say stat pad, but just really continue to rack it up and be in there on every single play, just like he has been throughout the season.
Okay, I'm glad you picked Alex. I'm no shock that you picked Alex, but good analysis and everything like that. I'm going to take one point of Alex and I'm going to combine it as a 4-player parlay. Okay, so you have to get 2 right and 2.
This is bold.
So we're going to go 2 and the 4 here, but there's 4 players that are tied with 1.5 tackles for loss this season. Alex McLaughlin, Ontario Thompson, X-Ray Alexander, and Bryce Butler. All 4 double their tackle for loss total in this game. And I think, to feed into your point, talking about especially with Ontario and Bryce Butler being defensive linemen, when you're able to push the pocket back, in terms of, when when Wisconsin's running the ball, that's where I feel that's going to come into play. And then you feed in that with Alex McLaughlin and actually Alexander, either coming off the edge or coming down in some way, shape, or form. I think at minimum, Washington has 4 or 5 tackles for loss in this game. Just the way it's shaping up, the weather, everything, it might not be a high scoring game, but there's going to be a lot of production on defense.
So I do like where you're going with that. I went with the secondary for my other one as well. I wanted to stay on the back end of the defense because, like I was talking about earlier, Wisconsin has been prone to turning the ball over. And this is one of those things where if we do see a true freshman quarterback making his first career appearance in any way, whether it is sprinkled in like Dezmen Williams was last year, or he even just gets the start, I think that this is one of those games where Washington's just veterans, just truly elite guys. Both of them have been tremendous this year on the outside in Tacario Davis and Ephesians Prysock. This is one of those games where I think Washington can force 2+ interceptions, just like they did last week or 2 weeks ago. Gosh, again, time really flies. It's exhausting, but I think they can get 2+ interceptions. I wanted to really double down and say, oh, somebody gets us first and whatnot, but I'm just going to leave it at that for the time being because there are so many different ways that Washington can exploit this passing game, and it's just a matter of doing exactly what you're talking about and playing stout in the run game and just really not letting this Wisconsin offense get any kind of momentum going early on in the game, which I do feel pretty good about.
I'll give you a name that gets his first career pick, Zadrian Shane-Saleh.
I really did think about doing that one.
And so now I'll just segue that into my, other prediction here. I think that UW will be able to hold Wisconsin to under 2 third down conversions in this game. I know that, and that is bold-ish, given that they still struggle on third down. I don't believe that they'll get 0. That Washington ain't, the Alabamas of Nick Saban era and things like that. But this defense really does have the potential, like we talked about in the last segment, to lay the foundation, Jedd's favorite word and everything, for what is to come in November. And where it all starts is improving third down defense. And to me, you have the perfect offense next to Purdue and UCLA, arguably, ironically, how that schedule sets up, to, you set that tone. And I think if you can, you're probably going to get 8 to 12 first down, third down opportunities. If you're able to only allow 2, you will be more than fine in this game.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Let's switch over to the other side of the ball here. I look at this offense, and I want to go back to the very first point I made on this show, that Dezmen Williams Jr. in a game like this can absolutely thrive on the ground. So I want to go back to something you wrote on Huskies Wire a couple of weeks ago about Dezmen potentially being in the mix to set the single season rushing record for quarterbacks at Washington. I didn't go quite as far as you did, but I'm proud of this one. I have Dezmen Williams going for 70+ rushing yards. The number you wrote about on Huskies Wire was 88. And I have him scoring 2 touchdowns in this game, which would bring him to 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground this year. And this is another one where I look at it, and teams can account for Dezmen Williams as much as they want, where it's something I always like to think about at the NFL level too, where it's, we had this guy come in and simulate Lamar Jackson as the scout team or mobile quarterback or whatever. We had this guy do it for Josh Allen, whatever. It's so, and you said it perfectly, it's so hard to prepare for what Dezmen Williams brings on the ground, where you can watch all the film you want, and then watching him accelerate and just not even just accelerate, the way he's able to move in the open field with all the jukes and spins, whatever else he has in his bag, and just how hard it is to bring him down in a game like this, where again, weather is expected to play a factor. He can really leave some of these Wisconsin defenders on skates, and he's so much fun to watch. He's so electric in the open field, whether it be on scrambles or on design runs. I feel like this is going to be one of those games where Dezmen Williams can really make a statement with his legs.
Dezmen, big Xbox guy back in the day. I asked him about that after, I think, the Rutgers game, whichever one it was that he set that career mark for. And, when you do the whole A-B juke thing and all those types of things, that's where that question came from. But I absolutely love that point. So I'm going to go with the other running back, or the other runner that I should say that will factor in this game. I'm going to give you Jonah Coleman's stat line. Okay. 17 carries, which I think is still a little high, but I think there'll be a reason for that. 103 yards. He finally gets back over the 100-yard mark, and he gets 2 touchdowns. I think both will be on the ground. I don't think there'll be one through the air and one on the ground. I think Jonah, if Washington does what we think they're going to do in this game, it has to start with Jonah, and Dezmen will absolutely feed off that. That's nothing to take away. I'm glad you mentioned both the story and just the overall point about Dezmen, because the offense runs through him. But as we've talked about for the last year and a half now, the offense doesn't go without Jonah Coleman. I think that is a tandem factor there. Dezmen works well when Jonah is able to run. Jonah is able to work well when Dezmen's able to throw and kind of do everything that he does. So if Jonah is able to have his, solid day at the office, shall we say, that's kind of what I expect in this game.
So I do like where you're going with that. I also, huge shout out to Jonah for being named a finalist for the Paul Hornung Award, which is given to the most versatile player in college football, and everything that he's done on the ground and through the air has been so impressive this season. Still leads the nation with 15 total touchdowns, by the way. I like where you're going with that. We have to talk about the passing game, though. And the guy that I turn to is not Denzel Boss in this game. I went with Dezmen Roebuck, where he's been so reliable for this team all season long. I think he sets a new career high in this game with 5+ catches. This is just one of those games where, again, we talked about some of the struggles from Wisconsin secondary so far this season. And I just think that when I look at what Dez brings to the table, this is one of those games where if these talented edge rushers can get a little bit of pressure on Damon, he's going to get the ball out of his hands quickly when he's not, looking to scramble. And I think Dez is going to be that go-to guy who, in a game like this, doesn't need to do too much in terms of pushing the ball downfield. And that's, I love when he is able to get into the intermediate and the deep game as well, but he's just someone who separates so well and just understands coverages and understands where he needs to be at any given time. And if he's doing that in the, let's just call it the 5 to 10 yard range, I think that he and Damon are going to have a really fun connection on Saturday. So give me a new career high for Dezmen Roebuck in receptions.
I like that. So I was torn between two guys. Do I take the freshman or do I take the veteran without giving names?
Oh, you take the freshman. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Raiden Weinsberg gets his first career touchdown at Wisconsin. And I think and to be clear, the other one was going to be Omari Evans getting his first career catch at Wisconsin, fun fact. But I think Raiden has just been building so much. Jedd, when he was on with Jim Rome earlier this week, talks about, hey, we have 2 starting freshman wide receivers. And to me, I'm like, man, that's right. I mean, Dezmen obviously being the main one there with the production, but Raiden has been a consistent contributor this season, and he would be, aptly rewarded. I think back to Rashid Williams' touchdown at Iowa last season, where not going to be a loss, but I think just, getting that late touchdown, maybe he finds. I think it'll come in the second or third quarter. It won't come late. It won't be the last touchdown. But I think it'll be a touchdown in which we can look back and say, hey, you know what? Your first career touchdown really did matter at the end of the day.
I love where you're going with that, but that means it's time for your bold prediction. Oh, I was too late.
No, never too late. No, I was going to say just the fact that I love that we have that sound effect now, and I'm trying not to mess it up.
Of that.
So I'm hesitant. Washington 28, Wisconsin 10. I just don't feel super. I feel super confident about Washington winning this game. But this is not the Maryland game where I literally got these score. I miss when you say the always accurate score prediction at the beginning of the show, because that is used to be such a facade. And then the Maryland game happened. I swear, since you're your score prediction, it's never accurate. But I think that.
Well, no, we stopped that at the beginning of the year though, mainly because of just how last season went. I think.
That's more than fair, because last season was a train wreck. But I think this season, again, you're talking about another road win for Jedd, another kind of building block game, and a game that you absolutely should win. There's no reason Washington should not be securely ahead in this game, but going into the fourth quarter.
Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the season, so please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day, so please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell, so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you after the game.